On the night of December 20th in the Huachuca Mountains of southern Arizona, a motion sensor tripped at 8:27 in the evening. The camera belonged to a hobbyist, a man who had been running trail cameras in these mountains for 5 years, hoping in the back of his mind for exactly one thing. What walked into the bottom of his frame was a Jaguar. Arizona Game and Fish authenticated the footage. Then they compared the rosettes, the ring-shaped spots on a Jaguar's coat, which are as unique to the individual as a human fingerprint, and confirmed something stranger than the sighting itself. This was not El Jefe. It was not Sombra. It was a Jaguar no one in the United States had ever recorded before. Here is why that shouldn't be possible. Jaguars were deliberately erased from the United States by the middle of the last century. The nearest breeding population is roughly 125 miles south, in the Sierra Madre of Sonora, Mexico. Between that population and these mountains lies the most heavily fortified border on the continent. 2/3 of Arizona's borderline now sealed by steel wall that researchers have measured as effectively impassable to animals this size, and yet they keep arriving. 8 of them. 9. One after another for 30 years, walking north into a country that killed every one of their kind. Nobody can say for certain how they're getting through. And the deeper you go, the stranger the question becomes. Because the real mystery isn't how they cross, it's why they'd bother. If you find this kind of thing as fascinating as I do, go ahead and subscribe. It takes 2 seconds and it genuinely helps the channel. And tell me one thing while you're here. Where in the world are you watching from, and had you any idea there were wild jaguars in the United States? Drop it in the comments. I read them. Now let's get into it. To understand how odd this is, you have to start with how thin the record is. For 20 years, from 1976 to 1996, there was exactly one confirmed Jaguar sighting in the United States. 1. The animal was, for all practical purposes, gone. A piece of southwestern folklore, something old ranchers claimed their fathers had seen. Then in March of 1996, in the Pelanchillo Mountains of southeastern Arizona, a houndsman's dogs treed what everyone assumed was a mountain lion. It wasn't. It was a Jaguar. He photographed it and let it go. 6 months later, in the Babaquavari Mountains to the west, it happened again. A second Jaguar, a second set of photographs, a second animal that walked away alive. 2 sightings half a year apart, in a country that hadn't reliably seen one in decades. The following year, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service relisted the Jaguar as an endangered species. And because of those rosettes, biologists could do something they'd never been able to do before. Count individuals. Not sightings, individuals. Since 1996, roughly 8 to 9 distinct Jaguars have been documented in the American Southwest, each one identified by spot pattern. Each one, in effect, a name. Macho B, an old male believed to be 15 or 16, who was captured and radio collared in 2009 and died in the aftermath, a case that still generates argument. El Jefe, the boss, first photographed in 2011, named by Tucson middle schoolers for his swaggering walk, who held the Santa Rita Mountains for years and once, apparently, ate a black bear. Sombra, Shadow, photographed in the Chiricahuas repeatedly since 2016. Yooko, who worked the Huachucas and was shot by a rancher after crossing back into Sonora in 2018. That's the record. 8 or 9 cats in 30 years, in a country the size of this one, which is precisely what makes the pattern so hard to dismiss. Because they were not always rare here, not remotely. Jaguars once ranged across the southern United States, through Arizona and New Mexico, into Texas, into Louisiana, into California. In Theodore Roosevelt's lifetime, they prowled as far north as the Grand Canyon and the Gila Wilderness. This was Jaguar country, and had been for thousands of years. Then we removed them, and the record of how is unusually specific. In 1906, a trapper killed a female jaguar in the Chiricahua Mountains and sold her 2 cubs as pets. In 1932, a predator control agent working for the United States government shot a female in a pine forest on the south rim of the Grand Canyon. And in 1963, a hunter killed a female in the White Mountains of east central Arizona. Hold on to that last date because it becomes the center of this entire mystery. That 1963 animal is the last female jaguar ever confirmed in the United States. 60 plus years, and not one since. Between ranchers, bounties, and federal predator control programs, jaguars were functionally eliminated from the country by the middle of the 20th century. It wasn't an accident of habitat loss. It was a policy, carried out deliberately, and it worked. Which is the first thing that makes the modern sightings so strange. These aren't the survivors of a hidden remnant population. There is no remnant population. Every jaguar walking in Arizona today is an animal that came from somewhere else and chose to come here. So the first question is the physical one. Can an animal actually make that trip? The answer is not theoretical. The nearest viable breeding population of jaguars sits in the Sierra Madre of Sonora, by most estimates around 125 miles south of Douglas, Arizona. That northern Sonoran population may hold as many as 200 cats. Mexico as a whole has perhaps 4,000, but they're concentrated far to the south. Everything in the borderlands is the thin, fraying northern edge of a species. 125 miles of Sonoran desert and mountain for a jaguar is genuinely crossable. Males disperse, that's what young males of almost every big cat species do, pushed out of their birth range by bigger males and driven to find territory of their own. A single male jaguar in Arizona has been documented ranging across an area as large as 500 square miles. And the landscape helps. This region is the Madrean Sky Islands. Dozens of isolated mountain ranges standing up out of the desert like an archipelago, each one a cool, forested, well-watered world floating above the scrub. The Pelinchilos, the Babocovaris, the Huachucas, the Chiricahuas, the Santa Ritas. For a cat moving north, they are stepping stones, a chain of green islands strung across a hostile sea of desert, each one holding water, cover, and deer. The road exists. It has existed for thousands of years, and jaguars have been using it for all of them. So the distance isn't the mystery. The distance a jaguar can handle. The problem is what we built across the middle of it. It's worth stopping to say plainly what kind of animal we're discussing, because big cat undersells it badly. The jaguar is the largest cat in the Americas and the third largest on Earth, behind only the tiger and the lion. A big male in this northern range can push past 200 pounds, but the number that matters isn't weight, it's the head. Relative to its size, the jaguar has the most powerful bite of any big cat in the world, driven by a skull and jaw built shorter and thicker than a leopard's. And it uses that bite differently than every other big cat alive. A lion or a tiger kills by the throat, suffocating its prey. A jaguar goes for the skull. It bites directly through the bone, between the ears, into the brain. Its name is thought to descend from an indigenous word meaning, roughly, the beast that kills in a single bound. Which explains a detail from El Jefe's years in the Santa Rita Mountains that people found hard to believe when it surfaced. Researchers examining what he'd been feeding on concluded that this jaguar, living in southern Arizona, had killed and eaten an American black bear. That is the animal moving through these mountains. Not a stray, not a wanderer barely hanging on. A fully capable apex predator that can take a bear in country Americans think of as empty desert. And it tells you something important about the mystery. Whatever is bringing these cats north, it isn't weakness or starvation. They are not stumbling into Arizona half dead. They arrive in good condition, establish territories of hundreds of square miles, hunt successfully for years, and in several documented cases walk all the way back to Mexico afterward. Whatever the reason for the journey, they are more than equipped to make it. Here's where the story stops making sense. Roughly 2/3 of Arizona's border with Mexico is now blocked by border wall, and in the sections that matter, this is not a fence. It's steel bollards standing up to 30 feet tall with gaps between them of about 4 inches. Wide enough to pass a hand through sideways, not a jaguar. And we know what that does because it's been measured. A multi-year camera study across roughly 100 miles of border barriers found an 86% collapse in successful wildlife crossings where steel wall had replaced the old vehicle barriers. For large mammals in some segments, the success rate didn't just fall, it hit 0. Then there's the number that says it most plainly. Over 2 decades, the Northern Jaguar Project has identified 176 individual jaguars in the northern Sierra Madre. Of all those cats, only 3 are known to have crossed into the United States. 3 out of 176. Add in everything else stacked along that line, the bulldozed patrol roads 60 to 150 feet wide, the high-powered stadium lighting that runs through the night, Mexican Highway 2 with its traffic paralleling the border on the south side, and what you have is not one barrier but a layered gauntlet, engineered, lit, and patrolled, sitting directly across the only route north. Every serious analysis says a jaguar should not be able to get through it. And in December of 2023, one walked into a trail camera in the Huachucas anyway. In 2026, a male the researchers call Cinco, was filmed 3 separate times in the mountains south of Tucson in March and April, pacing the same ground. They are still coming. The wall is still there. Both things are true. If you're still with me, hit subscribe because the next part is where researchers think they've found the answer, and it's a door that's being closed right now. As we speak, the leading explanation is almost embarrassingly simple. They're not getting over the wall, or under it, or through it. They're going around it. Roughly 80 miles southeast of Tucson, the mountains open into the San Rafael Valley, high, rolling grassland running right up to the international line. And for years, the border here wasn't a wall at all. It was a chest-high barrier of horizontal steel rails designed to stop vehicles. A truck can't cross it. A Jaguar walks straight under. That gap, and a handful of others like it, is the most likely answer to the question this whole story is built on. Researchers describe the San Rafael Valley as the single most important remaining opening for Jaguars anywhere on the Arizona border. A door left in the line, connecting the Sky Islands of Sonora to the Sky Islands of Arizona, exactly where the cats have always traveled. It also explains a detail that had puzzled people for years. When El Jefe vanished from Arizona's Santa Ritas in 2015, many assumed he'd died. Then, in November of 2021, a Mexican conservation group's camera photographed him alive in central Sonora, roughly 120 miles south of where he was last seen in the United States. 7 years gone, and he'd made the return trip. One of the oldest Jaguars on record along the border, and one of the very few ever confirmed to have crossed it in both directions. The corridor is real. The cats have been using it, and it is being closed. A 30-foot bollard wall is being built through 27 miles of the San Rafael Valley, the exact stretch researchers identified as the crossing. Conservation groups have gone to court to stop it. As one researcher put it when a Jaguar reappeared in that valley, "This cat is telling us that this corridor matters. If that door shuts, the animals now in Arizona may be sealed in on the wrong side of the line, and nothing new comes north again." But solving how they cross only exposes the harder question underneath, and this is the one that has genuinely stumped the agencies. Every single Jaguar documented in the United States since 1996 has been male. Every one. And the last confirmed female was killed in 1963. Think about what that means. A young male big cat disperses for 2 reasons: territory and mates. Arizona offers him the first. It does not, as far as anyone can prove, offer him the second. He is crossing 125 miles of desert, threading a militarized border, entering a country where his species was exterminated, to arrive somewhere with no females in it. An Arizona game and fish official laid the problem out about as bluntly as a state agency ever does. "There's nothing to pull them up here," he said. "There are no females. So the question is, why are they here?" Why they're coming up, he said, is unknown, and he called it a scientific mystery that no one has a handle on. That's the state wildlife agency on the record, saying it doesn't know. And the arrivals have been consistent enough to rule out a fluke. From 1996 through 2017, there was at least one Jaguar record in the Arizona, New Mexico, and Sonora borderlands every single year. Roughly every 5 to 10 years, another solitary male pushes up into Arizona and stays, sometimes for years, wandering hundreds of square miles of the Sky Islands, hunting, denning, holding ground in a country that has nothing obvious to offer him. They're not passing through by accident. They arrive, they settle in, and some of them stay until they die or turn back. So what would explain it? There is one answer, and it's the reason conservationists watch every new sighting so closely. It's a single, quiet piece of logic that the researchers who work these mountains keep returning to. Every one of those males had a mother. Female Jaguars behave differently than males. They don't disperse far from where they were born. They hold small ranges, they avoid conflict, and when they have cubs, they become almost impossible to detect. So the absence of photographed females in the borderlands doesn't prove there are none. It may only prove that females are doing precisely what females do, staying hidden. And the arithmetic is suggestive. Every male walking into Arizona is proof of a breeding female somewhere within reach of the route he took. The nearest confirmed female sits less than 100 miles south of the border, Researchers who study these cats have suggested the real edge of the breeding population may be closer than the official maps show, that the northern front of the species isn't where we think it is, and that the young males wandering into Arizona are the visible edge of something we simply can't see. Which reframes the whole thing. Maybe these animals aren't lost. Maybe they're not confused or desperate or making a mistake, and maybe they're doing what jaguars have done in these mountains for thousands of years, testing the northern country, generation after generation. And the only thing that's actually changed is that we started photographing it. There's a version of this where the sightings aren't a curiosity at all, where the 8 or 9 cats we've managed to catch on camera are the handful that happened to walk past a lens, and the real number moving through those canyons over 30 years was always higher than anyone recorded. Nobody can prove that, but nobody can rule it out either, and that uncertainty is the honest state of the science. And it hasn't stopped. That's what makes this a live story instead of a historical curiosity. 1996, 2 cats, 6 months apart in 2 different mountain ranges. 2009, Macho B. 2011, El Jefe walks into a camera in the Whetstones. 2016, Sombra in the Chiricahuas, Yooko in the Huachucas. 2023, a completely unknown animal in the Huachucas again. 2026, Cinco, filmed 3 separate times in a single spring south of Tucson. Through all of it, the wall going up, the lights, the roads, the traffic, the cats have continued to appear. And the pressure on that country has never let up. A massive copper mine has been fought over for years in the Santa Rita Mountains, the exact range El Jefe called home, with conservationists arguing it would gouge thousands of acres out of the best jaguar habitat left in the United States. South of the line, lithium extraction pushes into Sonora. Mexican Highway 2 runs hard along the border, fast and busy, and groups on both sides have been begging for wildlife crossings to keep cats from being killed on it. The United States has designated roughly 750,000 acres of critical habitat for a species that officially doesn't have a breeding population here. The University of Arizona now runs one of the largest trail camera data sets of its kind anywhere in the country. Dozens of cameras across these mountains, watching for animals that aren't supposed to exist on this side of the line. And when the researchers talk about what the repeat visits mean, they keep landing on the same conclusion. A cat that comes back to the same watering hole for 10 days or paces the same canyon 3 times in a spring isn't passing through. It's finding water and cover and prey. One researcher put it simply, this edge population keeps coming here because they're finding what they need. The habitat is still good. The country still works. The only thing that ever left was the jaguars, and only because we removed them. So, the file stays open. We know they're crossing. We can name most of them from their spots the way you'd name people from fingerprints. We have a strong idea of the door they've been using, and we're watching that door get welded shut in real time. 27 miles at a stretch. What nobody can explain, not the state agency, not the federal one, not the researchers who've spent decades on these ranges, is why an animal would make that journey toward a country with no mate waiting in it, over and over for 30 years. Maybe there's something out there we haven't photographed yet. Maybe the females are closer than the maps say. Maybe a jaguar simply knows what its great-grandmother knew, that the mountains north of the line are good country, and always were. What is known is that the Sky Islands are still standing, the way they have stood for millions of years, holding their water and their deer and their oak forests above the desert. That every few years, something moves between them north through a gap in a wall, and that on some night this year or the next, in a canyon nobody is standing in, a motion sensor is going to trip at some odd hour, and a cat that officially isn't there is going to walk out of the dark, look into the lens and disappear again.